Good morning and welcome to Higher Ground, an examination of some of the important issues of the day. I'm your host, Carmen Fields. One perfect evening recently, a group of friends and fans of C. Bernard Fulp gathered at the Jackson Homestead and Museum in Newton for a special celebration. He was donating his papers to the archives. In this region, most often when the term blacks in banking leadership is mentioned, the Unity Bank and One United Banks come to mind. My guest today, C. Bernard Fulp, was there at the creation of Unity Bank after holding positions with some of New England's largest financial institutions. However, in 1997, he branched out, so to speak, founding the MIDDLESEX Bank and Trust Company in Newton, Massachusetts. He served as its chief executive officer. When he sold the bank to Eastern Bank in 2002, it had some $30 million in deposits. Joining Fulp as my guest is Lisa Dady, the director of the Jackson Homestead and Museum in Newton, which will house the Fulp papers. The homestead is part of Historic Newton, an organization that pays tribute to the rich history of several Newton locations. Both of you, welcome to Higher Ground.
Thanks for having me.
I'm going to start with you, Bernie. Why establish another bank after experience with all of the institutions that you had?
A bank is a societal good thing. It provides mortgages. It helps small businesses grow. It makes the community function more efficiently in a number of ways. For me, after 32 years or so in a large bank, Newton presented the perfect opportunity for me to start something that I could really drive forward on terms that were favorable. A little bit of context. In the middle 1980s, there were more than 14,000 FDIC-insured banks in the United States. Then regulations changed and mergers and acquisitions took the number down to where they are now, approximately 6,000 banks. Mm-hmm. That merger and activity took banks out of a number of communities, including Newton. Merger activity left no commercial banks headquartered in Newton, and I saw that as a perfect opportunity for me. Mm-hmm. As you might imagine, starting a bank is not the easiest thing that one might do. I knew that there were risks involved. In fact, Jim Cash, a professor at the Harvard Business School at that time, warned me that there would be a cataclysmic reaction to me moving into Newton.
Now, is there a difference between what you did there compared to the Unity model or the One Bank United models?
In a fashion, yes. Unity/One United is a community development institution so designated by the Treasury Department. In that function, its mission is to help with economic development within a geographic area and support the residents therein. It has, in that regard, a bit of a social function along with this economic purpose. Middlesex did not have that type of beginning or concern. As you probably are aware, Newton is a well-to-do community. When we were doing the analysis for locating a bank in Newton, the numbers drove our decisions. Mm-hmm. It was an economic play throughout.
Your biggest accomplishment during your Middlesex tenure?
Middlesex started as an organization to serve the families and businesses in Newton and surrounding communities. As of today, at 188 Needham Street, the branch that we started is still there and functioning. It provides banking services and insurance services. So I think that the greatest function is that it really accomplished its mission.
Well, very quickly, why donate your papers there? Of all the possibilities of placing your archives, why with the Jackson Homestead?
There are a couple strong reasons.
Just give me the best one, because we're running short of time.
The mayor of Newton, Ceddy Warren, and I were having breakfast at one of the favorite restaurants in Newton, Johnny's. And he asked me at that time if I still retain some of the papers from my time in starting the bank, and I told him that I did. He asked me if I would consider donating those to the Jackson Museum. I replied yes, and so he introduced me to Lisa.
Well, Lisa, turn to you and give us an overview of historic Newton and where the Jackson Homestead fits in.
Sure, absolutely. Jackson Homestead was donated to the city, so the mayor had a real interest in that museum since it was part of the city of Newton in 1950 and was operated as a house museum, but now, since the 1980s, we have a variety of rotating exhibits, but we have two core exhibits. One is Newton history, but the other one is called Confronting Our Legacy, Slavery and Anti-Slavery in New England, in the North. And that is a semi-permanent exhibit because the site is an official site was an official site on the Underground Railroad. We're part of the National Network to Freedom Underground Railroad sites across the country. So we feel that its core part of our mission is to talk about Black history, not just abolition, but over the scope of many centuries. What we haven't been doing so good at lately is collecting the recent past and collecting a more diverse array of materials. So when I got introduced to Bernie, it was the banking, but then also the fact that he raised his kids in all of the schools in Newton, lived there for decades, and so it's a prominent Newton resident, and that's a core part of also of what we're collecting. So it's a little bit of African American history, recent past, prominent Newtonian. We also have another museum called the Durant-Kenrick House and Grounds on Waverly, fabulous cutting-edge museum that just opened about 4 years ago. So I'm inviting people to come to both of those.
What's the significance of acquiring papers of this type?
Well, at first, I recognize the significance of the array of items, the photographs, and some of the speeches that Bernie made. I needed someone to come in and tell me about the banking history and why that was so interesting. That was a little esoteric for me, but the whole collection is important. And the demographics of Newton have shifted over time, and we've done really good at collecting 19th century history of white European people who live in the big, beautiful Victorian houses. We have some stellar pieces about Chinese and Jewish and Black and Irish and other types of folks, but not enough, not in the right proportion for the demographics of the community. So this is just one piece in a full-on effort that we're heading into to diversify our holdings. Give us a sense of some of the other artifacts that are there at the Jackson Homestead. One of our treasures is there is a woman who in the middle about the 1840s, was living in the South, and she was a free woman of color. She wanted to move up to join her family in Newton, and she could not travel without a freedom pass, without a letter sort of stating, yes, allow this woman to pass. She is not an enslaved person. That is a rare document. That's not something that we see. We have something from George Washington in there. We have, some things that go way back. We have some great Native American artifacts. And the usual, wedding dresses, christening gowns. All of the above, but it's growing and diversifying, if you will. Thank you, Bernie Fulp, for your service. Thank you, Lisa Dady, for seeing the significance of gathering such material and saving it for posterity and all of us. We'll be right back after a brief break. Stay tuned.